And here we go. We have liftoff.
Propulsion continues to be nominal.
R68 chamber pressure looks good.
Following up.
Water towers fly! Yes!
Tango down to nominal.
Fighting downside FD off. Bring in FD off. It's orange!
R25! Oh my god! Oh my god!
Decollage.
Look at this!
Put that in the big bag,
343 unfolds to go.
Indeed.
We rise together, back to the moon and beyond.
The methane would be igniting in the flare, correct?
Yikes. You dead? Sure. We don't need any more of these.
Good afternoon and welcome to this week's episode of NSF Live, our weekly show where we go over everything happening last week in spaceflight, this week in spaceflight, and everything else happening in, I guess, the near time frame. I'll be your host for today, this Ian Atkinson. I'm a reporter with NASASpaceflight, but it's not just me as always. I'm joined by two very talented people, and once again, we're going to go through the pointings here. To my left, actually, only person on screen is Adrian Bile. How are you doing, Adrian?
Absolutely great. I'm really looking forward to this one, and I think we have a great lineup. And I'm also still searching for the two talented people.
The second talented person here is Alex Alejandro. How are you doing, Alex?
Well, I'm doing well. It's been quite a night with a scrub, with a launch, and now we have NSF Live again. And so I don't know. I'm excited because we're going to talk about a lot of things, I guess.
Yeah, and of course we have back in the studio Kevin Michael Reed pushing the buttons, pulling the levers, as we like to say, and producing today's stream. And like Adrian and Alex said, we have a fun lineup today. It's very diverse, covering a lot of programs, and these are really the best NSF Lives, in my opinion. We go through all kinds of different topics. So today we're going to be starting off, of course, kind of the elephant in the room. Vulcan has finally launched after about 5 years of delays. United Launch Alliance's first new rocket has left the pad, and it was a great flight. But we're going to go into some issues that were actually experienced with the payload. After that, speaking of BE4 engines, which power Vulcan, New Glenn's first stage booster has rolled out. This is likely a structural test article, but it's a great sign they're about to see testing begin. So amazing progress on the New Glenn front as well. And it's great to see some more heavy lift methane rockets coming onto the market. And then we have some more bittersweet, there's more bitter news. We have some delays coming to the Artemis program due to a variety of issues, but it's been a long time coming to most people. So we're going to go over that. And then, of course, as we always do, we have our Starship section at the end. Is that a Falcon 9 booster rolling out?
No, that's a tank at Starbase. They're rolling out another tank for the tank farm.
So has Alex been converted into Starbase Live?
You can see now the magic is broken here. But okay, see there. That's the tank. There.
The tank's interrupting my intro.
Oh.
I was so confused seeing you lean to the side. I'm like, is this supposed to be happening? I'm like, oh, there's something there.
I have a tank in my room, as Chris is saying in chat.
Well, I guess that really just goes to show there's no stopping what happens down at Starbase. And as our last segment of today's show, as always, we're going over Starship, where we got a lot of really cool information on the upcoming test program, as well as future developments in Starship itself. So some things that are going to really, really improve Starship in the long run that I'm excited to talk about. But first, before we get into all our topics, of course, this is a very interactive show. We're not just going to be up here, talking to you. We want to be talking with you. So if you have any questions about the topics we're discussing, be sure to tag us in chat with @NASASpaceflight. And to make it most likely that we'll be able to see your question and talk about it on the show, be sure to ask it roughly around the time that we talk about our segment. So we're about to get into Vulcan now. So if you have any questions related to Vulcan, Peregrine, ULA, now's the time to toss them into chat, and we'll do our best to answer as many as we can. So without further ado, Adrian, you want to take us through what happened with Vulcan this week? How did it go?
Yeah, so we finally had Vulcan this Monday, launching from Slick 41 in Florida. And first starting with the rocket part here. On the rocket part, everything looked good. We saw the 2 BE4s, we saw the 2 SRBs, we saw the Centaur upper stage. Everything on the rocket side worked perfectly. We saw the launch part of the mission being successful with both the lander and the Enterprise payload inserted in the correct orbits that were supposed to be done by the rocket. However, we also have to address here, shortly after deployment, Astrobotics, the lander on this mission, confirmed there were a potential propulsion issue, which ultimately resulted, and we now notice after a very transparent communication by Astrobotics on social media, we now know that this will lead into the fact that the lander will not be able to land on the moon, but instead will perform like an extended period in space where they will try to extract as much as they can in science out of the payloads that are on this mission. And right now, I think the prediction is that it will re-enter Earth's atmosphere and then break up in the atmosphere. So sadly, the lander part of this mission will not succeed fully, but I really think one of the biggest things we have seen over the whole week is like the incredible communication by Astrobotics. Constantly, I think we are at update 16 now, yeah? Like, they're constantly updating the public and also, like, really trying to extend this mission, trying to give all the science as much time as possible. So that's I think, the one really good thing that we have seen out of this mission so far. And again, I have to point it out, nothing of this is on Vulcan. Vulcan worked flawlessly.
Yeah, it's great that Vulcan, first off, it launched like perfectly on its first mission, which is an incredible achievement by ULA, their engineers, and all their really just like their test program in general. I mean, we've seen ULA's kind of pre-flying components on Atlas and Delta, including the avionics, the payload fairing, closely related solid rocket boosters, and things of that sort. And it's really, paid off in the end because Vulcan flew successfully on its first mission. And I'll also add to what you were saying, this communication from Astrobotic is incredible. It is unprecedented to get this level of transparency from a company, and like complete hats off to them. This is not the best situation for them. Of course, they would much rather be having a controlled spacecraft with 95% of its propellant on board, but it's great to see them being open about this, and that really it's kind of making the best of a bad situation, and we're getting to learn alongside of them.
And I think talking about one of the biggest or the coolest thing about this, like just to focus on Vulcan here for a moment. I think the launch looked absolutely stunning. Like I think the BE4s, the smiley of the BE4s were like everywhere. It's such a cool view. And like I again, hats off to ULA, because debuting a rocket is hard. Like debuting a new rocket can be very challenging. You have so many components you have to watch, and going to orbit and basically performing like a perfect insertion on your first mission. That's really what ULA kind of stands for. I think like that's their how they want to be perceived and like how they like market themselves. And I mean they followed through here and they absolutely delivered.
Yeah, it's been incredible. And talking about Vulcan, Adrian, I got a question already coming up here in chat. If I could get my panel up, there we go. Everyday Space Nerd is asking, when is Dreamchaser going to be launching? So that's kind of the big next question for Vulcan, because Dreamchaser was kind of the first big payload announced for Vulcan. So it's really people are looking forward to it, including me.
I think we even got a recent picture from Dreamchaser. So Dreamchaser, I think the last update that was provided is net April. So we are still somewhere in this Q2 range. Of course, it's a new rocket. It's a new payload. So there's a lot of uncertainties that cut into this. And we might see some slip here. I wouldn't even I wouldn't rule it out that there might be some shuffle around with payloads of Vulcan, and which will fly first and which second, second and third. We'll see. But in theory, Dreamchaser is planned for around Q2 of this year, which is quite fast for a new rocket. Like we have seen other new rockets basically take a year of break after they first flew. which is not that unusual because you want to understand your first flight. But ULA seems to be committed here to relatively hit a fast turnaround here, which would be, again, around Q2 and maybe about 3, 4, 5, somewhere in that ballpark, Vulcan launches this year.
Yeah, and it also comes into question the problem of the ISS schedule, because there's a benefit from Dreamchaser launching, which is the port that it's going to be attached to. There's not going to be anything else being attached to it. Like, it's just the same location. Hold on, because I see I'm not centered, and I'm having sort of kind of. There we go. Hold on. There.
Alex's frame is very dynamic.
I moved
You got
before for
camera
the whole
moving.
tank thing, and now I'm not in the correct position, so I'm having problems looking at myself in the camera. But yeah, and so the thing is with the whole situation with the ISS schedule, it's not the ISS schedule that is the problem. It's actually ULA's schedule, because they have I think they have an Atlas V coming up in March, and then they have a Starliner coming up in May. So it's Q2, but then it's like you have probably maybe April to be able to launch that. And Atlas V takes about 3 weeks or so, 3 or 4 weeks to prepare. Vulcan, in theory, may be able to be prepared faster than Atlas, but even then, you still have that kind of situation where, well, if Dreamchaser is not ready on time, maybe Starliner will launch first, which we'll have to see about that too. But there's going to be a sort of, I don't know how to explain it, like some kind of problem there with all of the launches that they have planned. Obviously, I'm hoping that at least they go off, but we'll see.
I love this picture by Max.
I was going to say, Max is like incredible, one of the most talented photographers I've ever met, and all these pictures are beautiful. I want like a metal print collage of this, like take up a whole wall in my room.
Yeah, like look at this, like basically every combination of like modern fuels just together. That's just beautiful to see.
Love to see that.
Hi, Happy.
Alex is just having fun with its background.
This is Kevin's problem, because he just put SPL behind me, and it's like, come on.
That's a bird.
Oh.
But yeah.
And coming off the Dreamchaser question, we have a question from Alan Wake here asking, what is the payload capacity of Dreamchaser? And I had to do a little research here. It's about 5,500 kilograms or 5.5 metric tons into low Earth orbit, which is pretty good payload capacity. It's a little bit under Crew Dragon, but that's honestly to be expected because Dreamchaser is it's a mostly reusable vehicle. So, landing on a runway, so you get like your payloads back immediately. So if it's going to be landing on the shuttle landing facility at Kennedy Space Center, you immediately get your payloads back rather than waiting, a day or multiple days when it lands on Dragon. So there's a bit of a trade-off there, but Dreamchaser is going to bring an amazing new capability to the International Space Station in that regard. Tony Jepson here asking, do we know when the next Astrobotic mission is? Because they've been so transparent. Adrian, do we know when the Griffin mission is launching?
I am not currently, I don't have present which date, but I know Alex probably has it in his, there's a good chance Alex knows.
It's supposed to be later this year, but then the Viper rover, it's now halfway done. It's like, maybe it's not going to be later this year. Because, that's the payload. The main payload launching on Griffin is the Viper rover from NASA. But then also the lander itself, I don't think we have seen too many updates about it. So, we'll have to see about that. I think maybe 2025 is more realistic. But I don't know when in 2025. But it was supposed to be later this year.
The good old spaceflight rule: if something is scheduled for the end of a year, just assume it slips to the next year. Bye, Bird.
Yeah, that's a very safe bet there, Adrian. And also, Alex, what rocket is Griffin launching on?
Falcon Heavy. That is actually a rare one because we're going to have a center core recovery for that one. Apparently, according to John Edwards, one of the vice presidents at SpaceX, he mentioned a while ago that mission is going to have RTLS on the side boosters, and then the center core will be recovered on a drone ship. Oh, come on. Are they cleaning the camera now?
This is, by the way, can I just
Someone
say,
did this on purpose. I swear.
just for the record, I believe Center Core recovery when I see
This-
it.
This
Likewise,
is probably
yeah.
Sean, right? Hi, Sean.
Oh, now I got a nice shot of the production site. You're spoiling everything. Starship comes later in the show, Alex.
I know, but
Oh.
it's Kevin. When we
And,
say Kevin is in the background, he maybe actually be somewhere there. I don't know. Whatever.
Let's see. Aonor here asks, I'm going to send this to you, Adrian. Do you think the payload was too small for a rocket of the size? Do you think Peregrine was really undersized and possibly, vibrations playing into it because of small size?
So far we have seen 0 statements or indication from either ULA or Astrobotics that indicate that the vibrations are at fault for this. Usually these kind of things are very much analyzed because you try to understand the vibration profile before a launch and then basically make sure your payload fits for it and sometimes even adjust for it. Furthermore, I do not believe the vibration profile of Vulcan would change that much based on that small part of the payload, because in the overall picture of the rocket, it's not that much weight compared to the rest of the rocket. So even if there would be a full-size payload, the rocket would be basically as heavy. Again, we have seen no indication that ULA has any involvement in this anomaly so far. This seems to be just on the Astrobotic side, and I do not think it's related to that.
Gotcha. All right, thank you for that.
They talked about when they initialized the propulsion system. Once the spacecraft separates, they start turning on all of the valves and trying to cycle them, and waking up the baby, so to speak. And so once they did that, they sort of looking back at the data, they realized that when they stopped doing that, one of the valves that they use for the pressurization system so basically they have a oxidizer tank, and then that oxidizer tank needs to be pressurized to be able to basically power the whole engine and everything. And so that pressurization system, the valve that goes from the helium to the oxidizer, it just basically got stuck in the it didn't seat properly. Instead of being completely closed, it didn't close all the way, and so it just basically rushed all of that helium into the oxidizer tank. The oxidizer tank just ruptured, whatever, basically exploded out of all of the pressure accumulated on it. But yeah, and I see now I'm Kennedy Space Center for some
reason.
reason.
Now in Florida.
Do you need an umbrella? Looks like it's raining where you're at.
I guess, yeah. I don't know.
Can we?
It's kind of weird.
Now you're at the port. Yeah. Can we go back to that picture? Can we go back to that picture of Dreamchaser, because it's fantastic?
Yes, please. There we go.
I love that so much. That's gorgeous.
I'm looking so forward to seeing that fly. I liked also pointing out good communication. They have been very transparent so far about their communication about Dreamchaser and invited media and let people see it. So I'm really looking forward to see that fly. I think overall having a great communication makes people more excited about your thing going to space. So I'm looking forward to see that.
Yes, I've been waiting for Dreamchaser since about 2014, so it's been 10 years now. Back when they were in the running for the commercial crew program, actually. For those who are unaware, Dreamchaser originally started out competing against Crew Dragon and Starliner for the commercial crew program. Of course, Dreamchaser lost that and went to Crew Dragon and Starliner, but then Sierra Nevada kind of reconfigured Dreamchaser to be a cargo spacecraft, and then eventually won a contract for the Commercial Resupply Services 2 contract. So they're now on order for 6 missions to the International Space Station, at least. That will likely get extended if their mission is successful, to send cargo to the space station and bring back a significant amount of cargo to a runway landing. So it's a unique spacecraft in that aspect. And a question here, I'm just going to answer it real quick from Galadriel, saying, how are astronauts supposed to get in Dreamchaser before launch if it's enclosed inside the fairings? And that's a good question, because it's not supposed to, at least as of right now. There's no crew capability version of Dreamchaser that has been proposed or is going to be built. This is only a cargo version. If it would launch crew, it would not be in a fairing. It would be exposed so that, like you mentioned, for safety reasons, they can get the astronauts in, and if there's an abort, get astronauts out.
Alex
What's
wants to
going
say
I was
something.
trying to imitate the the thing that I did a while ago. But yeah, I will ask the question: how people do get into the Soyuz? It's inside of a fairing. How did people get into the Apollo? It was inside of a fairing. How
Yep.
do people will be getting into Orion? Because it's gonna be inside of a fairing.
Is the answer doors?
Just door. Just build a door on the fairing. That's actually what they're gonna have with Vulcan to be able to do late load cargo on Dreamchaser. So they're gonna use the actual arm that they use already for a Starliner. It's gonna be ironic that it may be used before they actually fly people on Starliner. But anyways,
Wow, you're right.
so they're gonna roll that crew access arm, and there's gonna be like a hatch, and they just access the side of the spacecraft, and they are able to put all the late cargo.
Awesome.
Maybe a similar thing will happen with Cygnus, because it's gonna fly on Falcon 9, and that kind of stuff. They can do it with Antares. They have they had this kind of pop-off tip of the fairing, so they used to just remove it and then go into Cygnus, because they are contractually obligated to have late load cargo for these CRS-2 contract missions. So Dreamchaser, Cygnus, and Dragon, now all three need to have late load capability. So even though Cygnus will launch on Falcon, they must have found any sort of solution, maybe a hatch on the fairing or something, because it's an obligation. So
Yeah, with Falcon 9, they do have the capability of putting doors in the fairing or hatches. And I don't know about the location of those relative to where Cygnus is in the fairing, but you could possibly do that. Maybe even, if possible, demate the fairings on the launch pad. But that could be a whole issue of clean room stuff.
Yeah.
But that's something we're gonna have to. It's actually coming up relatively soon, isn't it? In the next few months, the NG-20 mission. I forget the exact launch date, but I think it's coming up sometime pretty soon.
29th of this month. I don't remember
This
the exact
month?
time. But yeah, it's later
Wow.
this month. Cygnus on
That came
Falcon 9.
fast. I love that. I can't wait for it to get back to
And then
Antares
another one
because
by the end
Wallops.
of the year, if I remember
Great.
correctly.
Awesome. That's good to hear. Let's see. Question from Nomad.
People
up?
just want to send me. Someone did a poll in chat for some reason about where I'm gonna be teleported next. I guess I'll find out.
Actually, I want to ask a question here. I want to start a fight here. So, what do you think is going to launch first? Starliner with crew or Dreamchaser with cargo? So, who's going to use the crew access arm first? Starliner for crew or Dreamchaser for cargo?
That's an interesting one.
Oh boy.
I'm gonna say. So I'm gonna. The funny thing is, both of them are right now net April. So, but I think so. I'm basing this solely on the fact that I think Starliner. Let me turn here. Starliner would get, I think, ISS priority. So I think it will be Starliner based on the fact that they would get priority to go to the ISS versus Dreamchaser.
Okay. I
Alex?
think that there's a good chance that both get delayed, and it is something like non-launch on Q2, and it's like in the summer or something. There's a good possibility that that's maybe a thing. But in terms of which one is first, it's so complicated. Why do you do this to me? Oh well, Max actually brings up a good point. Crew from Pat 40, not just
Also,
the crew access arm
ooh.
at Slick 41 being used first, either for Dreamchaser or crew on Starliner, but maybe crew on Pat 40 might be first, even than those two. I will say there's a good possibility that happens.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think I trust in the SpaceX schedule, so I think that will be first.
Yeah. It all depends on when there's an actual mission available, I guess. But yeah, I'm going to say Starliner. I'm going to be optimistic about Starliner. And between both two, I'm going to say Starliner. But I think there's a good chance both actually delay from Q2.
So we say
I
we
agree.
all, at least Alex and I both say Slick 40 then Starliner, then Dreamchaser.
I would agree with that. Yeah, I agree with that. But either way, it's fun to see more races. Excuse me. So we had the Methalox race to orbit, which was won by China, and now has been won in the West by Vulcan. Now we're having the launch from Slick 40 using the crew arm in some capacity, or Slick 41 using the crew arm in some way challenge. So I guess it's gonna be a fun few months to see that here. And one more question, and then we're going to end off the Vulcan chapter here. Nomad77 here asking, will there be more than one Dreamchaser in the future? And yes, there are currently 2 under construction. One is going to be launching, like we mentioned, in April. The second one is about 1 year behind that in terms of readiness. So middle of next year, possibly that'll be flying. So yeah, we have, I think it's serial number 101 and 102. So yeah, that's something to keep an eye out. We'll have kind of rotating Dreamchasers like what they do with Starliner now. And what's going on, Adrian? What are we laughing about?
Hashtag Alex to Mars is spammed in the chat.
Because Mars won on the poll. Let's hold it here because we have an actual. Hold on, here. So
Mars cam.
This launch pad is going to be important for our next section. So let's keep it here, just a bit.
But in the end, democracy decided you're going to Mars. I'm just saying.
Okay, later.
Okay, we'll send you to Mars.
I just want to use this to point things out on the next section. Be like, here.
Oh, you people. All right, before we move on to what Alex was saying, to the new Glenn segment of today's show, first I want to go through some support that we've been getting. So our super chats, memberships, and gifted memberships. We always appreciate those from everyone in the community. Jim Cavett, common name that we see here in chat, has gifted 1 Red Team membership. Thank you, as always, Jim, for giving back to the community and letting someone experience all the membership perks. Matt's Gosselar, thank you. I apologize if I mispronounced that, but they've gifted 10 Red Team memberships. Thank you, Mats. That's quite a big amount of support there, and a lot of people are going to be enjoying those memberships in the community. Ground Umbilical Carrier Play. We're not on the Starship segment yet, but we'll really quickly go over this with a $5 super chat. They're saying, could the one engine test, which has been mentioned for Flight 3, be for the transfer from the header tanks to the main tanks? I actually don't know that. Alex or Adrian, you want to take this one really quickly? Do you think that could be for it? Obviously, we do know the one engine test is for a deorbit burn.
Which is the one thing they want to probably maybe do with this test.
Later.
But I will say possible, okay? And we move on.
Possible, yeah. That could be in a big. We'll come back to that in the Starship
Spoiler.
Michael Caviello, I apologize again if I mispronounced that, with a $10 super chat, simply saying, thank you, NSF. You guys are a treasure for the followers and enthusiasts of spaceflight. And that honestly means an awful lot. We love hearing support from people like that. And really makes us proud and happy to do what we do. So thank you for the support there, Michael. All right, and we've teased it for a little bit, but now we're coming up to New Glenn. So, Adrian, I believe you wanted to take this one as well. What has happened with New Glenn this week? We have seen a lot.
Yeah, so apparently Blue Origin has quite a bit of hardware they rolled out. We saw a New Glenn first stage booster that was rolled out from the Exploration Park campus to LC-36, which was quite impressive to see. I mean, look at this. Like, that's a gorgeous booster into giant, like, it's over, like, only the tank section is 40 meters, so quite a big booster. The expectation is that they will perform tests with this tank at LC-36. We know that at least the upper stage is not for flight. Maybe some other parts are not as well. We will just have to see. But we have, like, seen this hardware to roll out the 36, most likely for integration testing, as we also know, thanks to CEO David Limp, who posted a picture of a second stage Pathfinder in a hangar. So we know they have a fairing in there. We know they have a second stage Pathfinder in there. And we now know there's a booster in there. So, well, these are all the things you would need to perform maybe full integration testing. There you go. There's the second stage. So while it might not be a flight-ready New Glenn, we might see a very advanced Pathfinder rocket fully assembled very, very soon and rolling out to LC-36. Maybe some TE testing before that, because they have not yet fully tested their, like, full-size TE. But I mean, they're progressing, and as of now, New Glenn is planned to debut in 2024. That is this year, with the launch of the Escapade mission. So so far they seem to be at least trying. So we'll see what happens with New Glenn, but it's pretty exciting.
It really is, and it's great seeing so many like heavy lift rockets being developed and getting ready for flight. I mean, we've had SLS, we have Falcon Heavy that's now active, we have Vulcan, we have I think I already mentioned SLS, we have Starship coming up too. Starship is very well into development, and then now of course New Glenn. It's so exciting to be in this era of spaceflight now. And yes, you mentioned the Escapade mission that's launching in October. Is that correct?
I believe that's that. So there has been some. I know Alex already is like. I see you, Alex. I see the. So there's some potential because because of the power of a big rocket to maybe have that move a bit. So I think there's not been confirmed statements how much, but it seems they can go a bit later. And so just to explain this, an optimal transfer window just means there's a very basically you go more to the optimal, and then you go far away from the optimal again. That means the more powerful your rocket is, and the more powerful your rocket is for the jobs you're performing, the wider your actual window where you can launch will be. Because you can go a bit later if you can compensate it for power. In theory, you could basically transfer to an object at any given time, given you have an infinite amount of power. It's just that sometimes the problem is, well, we don't have yet the capability to produce an infinite amount of thrust in space. So that's the problem here. But it seems they can move a bit past this October window, and maybe we are talking about late 2024, early 2025, somewhere in that range, where they could still reach their target with Mars, with the Escapade mission in New Glenn.
Yeah, because NASA was saying at one point that it was going to be August, and then lately I've seen posts from them saying late 2024. It's like August is not late 2024, right? It's weird.
No, yeah, that's mid 2024 for me.
But yeah, and so it's like one of the things to consider is that the Escapade satellites, they were going to use the Photon bus from Rocket Lab to be able to go all the way to Mars. So they were going to be launched into so I have Mars now behind me, I guess.
Yeah, I wanted to comment on that.
Yeah. And so the thing is, the satellites were going to be launching to low Earth orbit. They were not going to be launched by New Glenn directly all the way to Mars. They were actually going to be launched into low Earth orbit. And so it was going to be August because it will take them a few weeks. And so the optimal sort of window is around September, October for a transfer to Mars. Now, with New Glenn, as Adrian was mentioning, you can take New Glenn, which is a big rocket, and be like, okay, maybe if we launch in November, it's out of the optimal window, but it's still good. And instead of sending them to low Earth orbit and then do the whole, going out to Mars and everything with Photon, we just launch it directly with New Glenn. And so that was sort of the idea there. And I think that's maybe the thing that changed, because that gave them at least 3 more months. Maybe November, December of this year might be the time when that is being planned. Again, we haven't really seen any sort of detailed actual date for it. We just had, that NASA was saying August for the launch, and now suddenly it's late 2024. So it probably is around November, December for that mission. But yeah, I'm on Mars, I guess. I'll use New Glenn. Or I could be on Mars, the Mid-Atlantic Regional Spaceport.
Yes, Wallops fan club.
Which I know you like a lot, so yeah.
Wallops fan club.
Which, I think it also makes a lot of sense moving to August to late, because if you would ask me, is New Glenn ready to fly by August? I would say, that's going to be tight, because we are talking about a pretty lot of modifications on getting a lot of hardware, especially be force ready by then. Now, if you ask me by the end of the year, that's a few more months. That's a lot of more time. They are fairly advanced in the New Glenn program right now, I know. Some people on X don't want to hear that sometimes, but yes, New Glenn is fairly advanced at this point. So I could see like there's a big difference, I feel like, here between, hey, we need to try to make August, or we are trying for November. November soundly still ambitious, but feels more doable to me.
I'd agree. I think there's still a long way to go for sure. I mean, like, look at this. This vehicle is just an advanced Pathfinder, I'd call it. Maybe a structural test article. There's no engines, no fins. The interstage says not for flight.
I want to point out we don't know if it has no engines.
Yeah, because it has that copper.
Yeah.
So
yeah, they could have.
Yeah.
They could have like Pathfinder engines in there, or maybe real engines somehow. Yeah. Either way, this vehicle is not ready for flight in any regard. So they still have a bit of a way to go this year.
The tank it does seem to be good enough, at least, to maybe load stuff on it. I don't know if maybe an actual propellant, but maybe a cryogenic fluid like liquid nitrogen, for example, that might be good at the very least. And then the second stage, on the other hand, I don't think it's any new second stage. I think it's actually the one that already did cryogenic proof testing a long time ago there at the launch pad. So it has already been proven that it can be loaded with cryogenic fluids. So they can load it with liquid nitrogen on the pad while stack on the booster and on the strong bag and everything. Like, they could really just made all of this stuff, put it out on the pad, and run through all of the GSC, all of the the ground support equipment, all of the cycling of everything, and just test it with an actual hardware on the pad, so that just like we saw for it will be sort of like the booster 4 and ship 20 of New Glenn, I guess, in that sense, because it was just used for ground testing and things like that. So that could be a way. And then in the future, we may see a more advanced booster, a more advanced second stage, where it has where it doesn't have those not for flight tags, and then we may be able to see an actual flight vehicle that can do a static fire on the pad and things like that. I don't know, like, because they also have this mini transporter erector for the second stage, so they can actually already do a test on the pad with the second stage and fire the B3U engines. So it's gonna be interesting to see what sort of path they go through as they go into that first flight. But I think it's gonna be a bit tight to launch these this year. 2025, I think it's more probable.
Yeah, and there's a lot of work still to go too. And you mentioned the pad systems and doing loading. This is a brand new launch pad, brand new tank systems, brand new transporter. Nothing of this is old or heritage hardware. So like you mentioned, Alex, it might be really useful to load the first stage and the second stage with liquid oxygen or liquid nitrogen, whichever they prefer, to test out the pad systems, make sure there's no leaks, make sure the pumps work properly and the tanks can hold cryogens at this pressure. There's a lot of testing they can do with this relatively simple hardware that they have on hand right now. And that second stage image that we were showing earlier, I just got to say, I was staring at that for like a half hour straight this weekend. That is a gorgeous, gorgeous piece of hardware. It really throws me back to the third stage, the S4B of the Saturn V. It really looks like a modern version of that. Those engines are so satisfying. I guess the size ratio of the stage, like, that is a 7-meter diameter stage. That is small on no levels. So about that's 24 feet in diameter.
That's a lot of, like, that's the thing we talked about a lot on the when we did the KC side chat. Like, there's a thing about New Glenn what people underestimate, and that's the diameter and size. This is not like a Falcon 9 diameter rocket. This thing is 7 meters in diameter.
It's twice a Falcon 9.
Yeah, it's twice a Falcon 9. This thing is absolutely massive. So
this thing is comparable, if not slightly more performance than Falcon Heavy.
No. It's slightly, it's in Leo, it's slightly less. Like it's like the last numbers we got is that it's somewhere below Falcon Heavy, but barely. But however, it gains more and more. Oh, look at that person!
Who's that guy?
Gains more on Falcon Heavy. The closer we, the higher the orbit gets. So basically, it will be a bit more optimized for high energy missions. But yeah, it's close. It's definitely in the Falcon Heavy class of rockets. That's certainly something you can say.
And someone
I'm
said
not
it's closer to Starship in size than Falcon 9. It's like a downsized version of a Starship, I guess. It's a bit
Kind of.
less taller or shorter, I guess, and then a little bit less wider. But yeah, it's big. It's actually, I think it's taller than SLS, which is bonkers.
It's like a midpoint between Falcon 9 and Starship in size. I mean, the first stage is about as tall as the first and second stage of Falcon 9. And then, of course, twice the diameter of it. So this is a massive, massive vehicle here. Like, do not underestimate the size of New Glenn.
Yeah,
Let's
it's
see.
like and going like down the engine section, we are suddenly talking about over 8 meters because it goes wider in the base. So it's almost as wide on the base as Starship, which is like
Yeah.
it's massive. It's quite
It's
massive.
crazy. And continuing with some New Glenn questions that we have here, Johnny Cheese here is asking, are the second stage engines of New Glenn the same engines as New Shepard? Adrian, are these the same engines, or I see
No.
Alex shaking his head?
No, they're not. They're totally like they are made for this different purpose. I would not doubt that they have learned something from their New Shepard program and operating it, like in operating with hydrologs and like all of that. However, no, they are not. They're totally not the same engine. I think a single New Shepard engine without having the numbers present right now would have a hard time doing anything meaningful for a New Glenn upper stage. There's probably a big size difference here.
Yeah, they don't even have the same engine cycle. They run on different cycles. So it's like,
Yeah,
I don't even know why
totally
they call it a B3U. It's like, just call it something else. It's a different
Yeah.
engine.
I was just about to say, yeah, the BE3 PM, the one on New Shepard, I don't know why
Yeah.
it's PM propulsion module. That's a pump fed, a combustion chamber tap off cycle, whereas the BE3U is an expander cycle. So it heats up the hydrogen around the combustion chamber and uses that like extra pressure to spin the pumps. So these are extremely different engine designs. And like you said, I don't really see how this is a BE3 vacuum optimized when it is a completely different engine. But hey, I'm not in charge of naming things.
Yeah, and just to also, we have one picture here queued up because we are talking about Blue Origin hardware and how fastly they can go from one rocket to another. I think this picture was November last year, somewhere in that range. So it's a bit older, but you can see like how can you believe they quickly can make a New Glenn flight ready? Well, like over half of the parts are probably lying here. We see bulkheads, we see stage modules, we see completed tanks that are sitting in this factory. So they are they have not started the production for Flight 1 yet. They are probably already well in production here, and they are probably close to finish. I mean, on the right side, you can see what I think is the first stage tank.
I'm about to say, I think that's probably the tank that we've been seeing, because the Pathfinder was much more, I guess, scrappy, you could say. This looks very clean.
I'm not even sure if it's that. I'm because there's another tank. Because there might be another tank which was constantly in the TCAT building. So there is a test tank that was pressured in the TCAT, and there was one in the 2CAT. And they were like, so I'm not sure if that is the same tank or if that's already the next tank. And I think you can also see a second stage tank basically at the back left side of this, because that should be a second stage tank. So yeah, there's quite a lot going on in this factory, and I believe we will see, like, maybe they will miss 2024, but I would be very surprised if we don't see a full stack flight-worthy New Glenn by the end of this year.
Gotcha. And kind of going off on that, Joe here asking, is the New Glenn Pathfinder, or at least a New Glenn, going to do a static fire prior to flight, Adrian?
As of now, they have confirmed that they don't plan a static fire. Of course, plans can change. we see all the times that plans change. But the last statement from Blue Origin CEO, if I believe, was that they will not perform static fire testing on the first flight. So
For
see.
the booster.
Yeah, for the booster.
The
That's
second
actually
stage, we believe it's going to be doing a static
Yeah.
fire test.
yeah,
on
which
the
is the
pad.
interesting thing because they have the mini TE, as we call it in flyovers, which
Yeah.
basically sets them up to perform second stage static fire testing. So it's kind of funny because you would usually expect the first stage to be like probably the one that gets a static fire, but it seems like for this
Yeah.
one we will get a second stage static fire, but the first stage will not get one.
That's really interesting, and that's kind of seems a bit risky to me. But again, I'm not in the Blue Origin engineering department. I don't know the ins and outs of this vehicle. Maybe they can tune down risk in other areas, but still very interesting. Not even like a 3-second static fire or something. But again, like you said, plans could change.
They perform tests in Van Horn to like quickly say that these engines will be fired.
Yes.
They will not be static fired on the booster, but in Van Horn they will probably test fire all BE4s before they go on the booster.
And now, soon, I guess, in Huntsville, I think it's the other
yeah.
test site that they have. So yeah.
4670,
They are
I
already
think, is a test band.
testing the B3 there.
Yeah.
Awesome. And Retro Fan here asking, how many BE4s does the first stage have, Adrian?
7.
There we go.
So if you think Vulcan was cool with 2, wait for 7.
The streak shots are going to be incredible for this. The blue plume. I cannot wait to see that.
The blue plume of the blue rocket.
The bloom, I guess.
I believe.
And
go ahead. Because I was
going to do another question.
I was going to bring up another point of talk here because we saw that sort of SN001 freedom thing on the intro stage. And one of the things that I saw a lot of people assuming is, oh, that's the booster name. That's the, all of that stuff. And I was like, wouldn't it be funny if that was actually the name of the intro stage and the serial number of the intro stage? Well, there's actually another name on these pictures. Maybe we can show it. There you go. It says there, Rushmore tank, whatever, Rushmore. So basically like, the Mount Rushmore and everything. And it says Rushmore tank aft. So it's like, what does that mean? Is it like the intro stage is called Freedom, or was it Freedom? Freedom, yeah. And then the tank is called Rushmore. And so this, by the way, you can see all of these detailed pictures and everything on L2, by the way, because we dump all of the pictures. I think this one is from Max in particular, might be. And then, he took all of the pictures and everything. And Julia also took pictures. And we have video of the rollout. But in one of those, we saw that it said Rushmore tank. It's like, wait, do they have different names for the different sections? It will be very funny if that were the case. Maybe in some place there's like, I don't know, Washington engine
Rushmore
section.
Rushmore freedom and liberty.
Yeah, Rushmore freedom and liberty. It's like some American, like super American kind of thing. It's
I'm
weird.
sorry,
As a European, it's like, okay, it's I don't know.
I feel like we're gonna have like the Jefferson landing leg, the Franklin landing leg, the Lincoln left fin. Like, I hope this was just like they put together the interstage from the Freedom tank onto the Rushmore tank or something. I would lose my mind if we had like 18 different names for one stage.
Yeah, like
Yellowstone landing leg or something.
Yellowstone landing.
I mean, Alex always likes to point out how much he likes names for stages. So
no, boy, it's like I just don't understand because. To be fair, like, see, there's Freedom there, but then we have a Crew Dragon flying on Wednesday, is it? Wednesday, whatever, on the 17th with Axiom 3, and it's like, we now have 2 Freedoms, but then you go back to Mercury, and there's another capsule that is called Freedom. It's like,
it is without a doubt a choice.
I bet some Orion is gonna also be called Freedom. I put my money on it.
I mean, they'll have to name the capsules. It's only right to let the crew name their capsules.
Yeah.
Awesome.
But
I'm going
anyway.
to do a few more questions here. Then we're going to hop over to the Artemis portion of this show.
All right.
Zach Riggs here is asking, I'm toss this to you, Alex. Are they going to do a first stage recovery on the first flight? And if no, do we know when it will be?
Ooh, I don't really know, to be fair. They have I think so far they have said that they want to recover it from the first flight. I'm a bit skeptical if they're going to be able to land it on the first try. Even New Shepard had a failure on the first attempt to land. It successfully did it on the second attempt, which is good. But again, it's a new rocket. It's big rocket, so it could still be not a successful landing. But we'll see. We haven't actually even seen the new barge that they are supposedly getting for New
Nope.
Glenn. But stay tuned to Space Coast Live because we're gonna see it arrive.
Yeah, we're still a bit away from seeing it, but I think once we see that drone ship or barge or whatever they're going to call it pull up, I think it's going to start to get real, and that's going to be fun. We've seen the crane arrive in Port Canaveral. We've seen the stages moving around. Now we've seen the transporter up. Things are starting to come together for New Glenn. Awesome. Adrian, I'm going to do 2 more questions here. One to you, asking why is it called New Glenn? So what's that naming about?
Oh yeah, so the naming scheme of it's kind of following like a tradition here because the first one was New Shepard, right? So that was honoring Alan Shepard, and now this is honoring John Glenn. And we also know already which will be the third rocket because they already in a presentation back then said the third rocket will be New Armstrong. So they're kind of basically naming them after famous people of space history that always performed certain milestones. That's kind of the naming scheme there so far going from. I'm not sure how they will go on with that because I think the fourth rocket then would be named after the first person on Mars once it happens. So I'm not sure. It's like my money is still on the new Isaac Man then, what we will see.
New Victor Glover.
Yeah, I mean, totally.
This is a Victor Glover fan club stream. And one last question. One last question here from Sebson asking, why are the BE4 flames blue when Raptors are purple and slightly orange? They use the same fuel, right? And yeah, but besides using the same fuel, there's a bit of a difference, right? Adrian, I see you shaking your head.
Yeah, so first off, it depends on quite a lot of factors we are talking about here. First, we are talking about the fuel itself. There's a difference how you mix methane because there's methane and there's liquid natural gas, which is mostly methane. So that has a potential influence on the flame. That's the first thing. Then you're talking about things like mixture ratio, because different rockets operate on different mixture ratios with different amounts of oxygen or methane, depending on mostly like temperature requirements. So that's another thing that rockets perform. And depending on the mixture ratio, you get a more, for example, orange or a more blue flame. It also can depend on potential other things, like part of your engine may be partially ablative, which I don't think based engines because they are reusable. But it could be for example, be a factor for Zuki 2, which is the one-time use. So we'll see how that.
Yeah.
But overall, it's coming down to the fact of like mostly mixture rate, most likely, which influences the basically how clean the combustion is, and depending on how clean is that, you get different colors.
Gotcha.
There's like I guess there are multiple things there to consider. One of them, I pointed that out the other day, that when you look at the picture from the B4 engines on Vulcan, you have a bright pair of solid rocket boosters on the sides that are washing out the whole thing, so you can only see the really bright and the really hot parts of the exhaust. But then when you look the B4 engine alone, it's actually bluish and purplish. Like it's closer to the Raptor than when you see it along, burning on Vulcan. But now on Raptor, you also have probably a lot of film cooling, which also kind of gets into the whole situation where if you have that film cooling, it may change the color of the exhaust, because you're basically dumping pure methane into the exhaust, and so it kind of probably changes the color. But then again, the whole situation of like natural gas or methane, technically Raptor uses natural gas, it's just that it's very pure. And then there's another thing with the whole natural gas versus methane. It is that sometimes companies just like to say natural gas when they're actually using highly purified natural gas, which can be called methane, basically. With this, I'm meaning that when we see ULA or when we see Blue Origin say natural gas, we heard straight from Tori Bruno, the one that actually uses the B-Force to power its own rocket, say that they use LNG, liquid natural gas, as a way of saying methane, that it's actually methane what they use. And so the only company that I've heard use proper LNG as the fuel is Relativity with the Eon 1 engine. They actually had problems with how they had to condition the LNG, because a bunch of things happen when you actually use less purified LNG. But yeah, that's one of the things. So I guess I covered a few of the points that may have not been discussed.
Thank you, Alex. And that's going to bring us to the end of our New Glenn segment. But if you want to see more, we have a very nice deep dive into New Glenn, what this Pathfinder means, and of course, what this even is in general on our channel right now. So that's uploaded just a few days ago, and that's a really nice deep dive from the team on as to what is happening with New Glenn, why is this important, and what can we look forward to in the future. So be sure to check that out after today's NSF Live if you want some more New Glenn content. And of course, always keep an eye out on Space Coast Live and our social media, because we'll be posting if we see any New Glenn hardware out in the wild. There's probably going to be some more coming up in the next few months, given the rate that they've been going at right now. So keep an eye out on Space Coast Live for some upcoming New Glenn testing. Now, before we move on to our next portion of the show, I want to thank a few super chats coming through here. Darla here with a store message saying Happy New Year to the crew. They're ordering their second sweater, and not just because Alex is rocking his today. Thank you, Darla. We appreciate that. And yeah, it's right at the end of the winter season, but it's never too early to start prepping for next winter. I mean, it's still freezing out, so it's going to be like the teens here this week. So stay warm. Everybody
Christmas
in the
themed,
U.S., stay warm.
Yeah, you probably need it either ways, because it's Christmas themed, but it's cold. At least everywhere in the northern hemisphere, I guess.
Yeah.
If you're in the southern hemisphere, just grab one for when it's cold there. Come on.
It'll be colder in a few months. Apocalypse Cow has gifted 10 Red Team memberships. Thank you very much for that. We appreciate your support there, and I've seen that name before in chat, so thank you for your continued support, Apocalypse Cow. And finally, a $5 super chat from Tom Dalton saying, do we know the production rate of the BE4 engine? And yeah, Adrian with that head shake simply saying, no, we do not. They're slowly ramping up production. They're in, I guess you could say, pilot production right now. They're starting with a few engines. They're making on the order of like 2 every 6 months, maybe, for Vulcan, but they're going to be ramping up. They have a new factory coming online in Alabama. They're making the lines more efficient. They're getting better engines. So,
I mean, if we want to see 3 more Vulcan flights this year and the New Glenn flight, they're gonna need about 13 engines this year. Yep.
That assumes that every engine passes testing perfectly.
Yes,
so
but like that's just
15.
But that's the fact. But yeah, anyway, just quickly, yeah.
Yep, exactly. And thank you for that, Tom Dalton. We appreciate that. And then now, moving on into the third segment of our show, Artemis. We've heard some sad news about the Artemis program, but kind of a reality check or a wake-up call. So, Alex, give us a deep dive about what is happening with Artemis right now. Why are people talking about schedules so much?
Well, apparently we're going to have Artemis 2 moving from November 2024 all the way to September 2025, according to NASA, at least on this latest press conference that they had. And well, it's not unexpected that they delayed, because we were expecting some sort of delay. I guess it was more about how long it was going to be. I was expecting it to be maybe like 4 or 5 months. It ended up being 10. That's a lot of a delay. And it all comes down to, first of all, they also need to, so first they need to prepare Orion from all of this stuff so they grabbed hardware from Orion from the first Artemis mission, from Artemis 1 Orion. They put it back on Orion for the second Artemis mission, and they obviously still need to go through all of that. But first and foremost, the reason for this delay that is still related with Orion is due to the electrical systems and the Eclipse system. They have all of these systems that they need to test out. And for Artemis 3, they were testing those for the Orion on Artemis 3, the electrical systems, and they basically had an issue with one of those, and they had to go back, and now they're sort of looking if Orion will have that kind of issue as well for the Artemis 2 mission. On top of that, they also have the heat shield issues from Artemis 1 because they saw more liberation of debris than expected out of the the heat shield is basically ablative, so you expect abrasion and things like that. They saw more than they were expecting, so they're also looking into that. There's a number of reasons in general, right, as to why this happened. We have a more detailed video about this than I could even explain in the time that we have. But there you can see some of the shots there of the heat shield from the first Orion. And so they're looking at all of that data now thoroughly. And I will say that even though it's a bit of a shame that we had that delay, it's good that the delay is not because of some manufacturing thing or whatever. Like, they're looking at the safety of the crew. They're looking for this mission to go right because they're having, for the first time, people on it. And we have had too many times in the past, decades ago, where missions were just being pushed and pushed and pushed. Like, we need to launch, and they go fever effect. I kind of prefer if the delays are because of safety rather than some other silly issue or whatever, right? But yeah, and then Artemis 3 is going to be also delayed. That's the one that is going to feature the lunar landing with the Starship, which we're going to be talking shortly as well. And that one is going to be, so that has been delayed also from late 2025 all the way to September 2026. So that one is also another big delay. It is both because of the Artemis 2 delay and also because of the extra needed time to get the Starship ready for that. Also the spacesuits as well, they need time to get that ready. And then they also said that Artemis 4 was on schedule for, I think it was September 2028 or something like that. It's 2028 basically. But it's a bit up in the air. Like, it's rare that it didn't change because there's still issues with getting through the design path of the Gateway Station, because that's going to be the first mission of Orion going to the Gateway Station. They also have the IHAB module launching on that mission. It's also the first Block 1B launch of SLS. Like, that's going to be another one where they debut the exploration upper stage, they debut the mobile launcher 2, they debut a lot of stuff. And then even on top of that, the HLS Starship is going to be a different version than the one that is going to fly on Artemis 3. So we have a lot of things changing there, and I'm really skeptical that this is going to be sticking to 2028 because something is probably going to be behind at some point. And so I think I've covered most of the stuff that is related with this story, but definitely not unexpected, but a bit disappointed that some of these delays are a bit longer than I expected. And before anyone asks, I think the lunar landing is actually going to happen 2027, 2028. I'm going to get ahead of that.
I was about to say the same thing. It's it's sad to see the delays here, but I would bet money these are not the last delays we're going to see. I mean, you could say like, oh, SLS has had a lot of delays, which it really has. And of course, it's not surprising to see more delays for that. But also just take into consideration the scope of this project. We're working with 2 super heavy lift launch vehicles, both of which are still in development. Some more than others. There's also other aspects like gateway logistics, resupply services, the CLIPS program, spacesuits, astronaut training, the spacecraft availability with Orion. There's a lot of things that need to come together here. And I'd honestly say this is a bit more complex than Apollo in that sense. There's a lot more factors at play. And if anything, if anything in that path that I just mentioned falls behind, we're going to have issues. So it's, again, we have to keep an eye out over the next few years to see what happens. But as of right now, it seems to be getting slowly pushed back over time.
Yeah, and props to the SLS rocket, because while initially we always talked about, oh, we will never get in time to the moon because of SLS, well, it's kind of the only part of the hardware right now that is not really super critical on the path. We have schedule issues with Orion. ESM is not really an issue. SLS so far seems not to be in a critical path. And then you have HLS and spacesuits who are on the critical. So it's like, it's kind of unexpected, but SLS is not really the big blocker right now where people are like, oh, we're waiting on SLS. No, that doesn't seem to be the case.
Even then, it's still delayed, because I think it's fair to say that even though it's not on the critical path, it's not expected to be a sort of issue with the schedules. It's still delayed, because this core stage, the core stage of SLS, was going to be shipped last year. Like, I remember hearing dates of like March 2023 or something like that, way back when. It's already 2024, and we haven't seen that being shipped. So, like, it's still delayed, but it's just less delayed than all of the other stuff.
I wanna as this moment take a quick personal moment between Alex and me here as the Europeans on the team, because the ESM so far has been very flawless in the schedule. They will ship the third ESM for the Artemis 3 mission, the moon landing actually, in 3 months from now. And so far it seems that the ESM is like, they're not on an issue list. So there we go.
Good for you guys. Good for you guys. That's really impressive, though. I mean, I know there's been a lot of issues with the ESM in terms of schedule, but it's really turned itself around. And same with SLS too. All right, we're going to do one quick question here, then we're going to hop over to our next segment. Tony Jebson here is asking, is the landing still planned to happen on Artemis 3, or is it slipping to Artemis 4?
That's so interesting question, because they still say it is as planned, but maybe it's just me, but I feel like they're getting weaker in denying that there might be a change if things came up. Because in the past, they have been always like, no, it will never change. Artemis 2 will fly around the moon. Artemis 3 will land on the moon. And this time they were like, no, we have to look at operations. And if we see a different story after Artemis 2, we will adjust. So they are kind of like getting into this phase where they're still denying it, but they are denying it a bit weaker than before. So if HLS, like, worst case, Starship or the spacesuits delays, I don't know, to 2028. I don't know why, but like something big happens, it doesn't work. I could see them flying like Artemis 2.5, maybe, like something in there. We'll see. But it's not as strong as a denial as it was before.
One of the problems that I have with that idea is that where do they go? Because that's one of the problems. Like Artemis 4 is supposed to carry the big habitation module for Gateway. Otherwise, without that, they don't really have a lot of things to do on Gateway. So even if they went to the Gateway, it's like they only have the PP and Halo and Orion attached to it, and that will be it. And that's counting that the Gateway is actually there when they are able to launch, which is still also a big question. So, just saying, that's one of my main problems with that whole idea.
Maybe they go into a moon orbit instead of just doing a flyby, because Artemis 2 will just be like a flyby, and
yeah. I mean, Gateway's not going to be in position until absolute best end of 2026. At the absolute best, which is like probably end of 2027 realistically is an early date right now. But yes, there's a lot of slipping going on with Artemis. And as we get to the end of this segment, I want to talk about this video we've been having playing on screen this entire time. Philip Sloss, who's kind of our, dedicated SLS reporter. He's been doing incredible work over the past like decade on reporting on SLS. You can see him there on the left. He took a trip to Michoud, where they're building SLS and where they're building portions of Orion. We have a lot of in-depth footage of that production and of the hardware actually being built right now. That's up on our channel right now as well if you want to get more Artemis content and see exactly how these things come together. Because as someone who loves manufacturing like myself, I love seeing these behind the scenes access of this is how we're building a rocket. This rocket is sending humans back to the moon. This rocket will help land humans on the moon. It's really cool to see, and yeah, I absolutely recommend checking it out. Again, that is up on our channel after NSF Live. Be sure to check it out and show Philip some support as well. All right, going to go through 2 super chats that we have here. We have a $10 tip here from Joe, saying it's the best way to support us, and YouTube doesn't take a cut. And yeah, that's the exact point of tips.nasaspaceflight.com. It's a great way to directly support us without, YouTube doing its thing. But yeah, again, tips.nasaspaceflight.com goes directly to us. It's an excellent way to support the work that we do alongside super chatting and gifting memberships and becoming a member yourself. And speaking of gifting memberships, Sideshow Bob, thank you for your support. They have gifted 1 Red Team membership to the community. We've seen a lot of gifted memberships in the stream, and it always makes me happy to see people paying it forward back to the community. Now, that's going to bring us to the end of our SLS segment. We discussed a bit about delays there for Artemis and how Starship is playing into that. And speaking of Starship,
just quickly, we have a video about all of this again in detail, like we have with Vinny Glenn, that you can watch on our channel. And also, it's haunting me because I didn't shave in time. So it's like me a week ago. Like it's my haunting past. There we go. Go ahead.
Awesome. So let's move into our final portion of the show today, the one that pretty much everybody looks forward to, where we get into a lot of discussions and fights, and it gets fun. Starship. So, Alex, we had a lot of new news about Starship, its upcoming flight profile, or upcoming flight test plans, upcoming upgrades. Can you take us through what have we heard about Starship here?
Yeah, so SpaceX had an all hands meeting back like earlier this week. I think it was on Wednesday or Thursday or something like that. And SpaceX published that video out, and so Elon was talking about all of the great stuff that SpaceX had done in 2023. We actually had I actually wrote a long article about most of this stuff. It's funny because it was kind of sort of in the same order. But yeah, and so he talked about all of the Falcon flights and everything, but the Starship part is the one that all of the people are talking about, of course, which is what happened with Flight 2, what is coming out with Flight 3, what is coming out after Flight 3, and everything. And so the main thing to take out from the Flight 2 talk was that so Elon mentioned that the reason why the ship was not able to get all the way through its burn is because it had a fire that was produced by a LOX dump. Basically, they dumped liquid oxygen, because that liquid oxygen will be, so basically because they don't have a payload on board. If you can think about it, if Starship can carry about 100 or 150 tons to low Earth orbit, that means carrying about, 80 to 130 tons of liquid oxygen when the end of the burn happens. So it's like, you don't want all of that excess liquid oxygen, right? And so they were dumping that. And the thing is, I had seen so many times people assuming that it was a liquid oxygen leak, because we saw prior to all of this, we basically had a lot of people looking through the webcast, and you can see the line of the liquid oxygen level on the tank. You can see it drops further than the methane one, and so it's like, are they losing liquid oxygen? So a lot of people were claiming, oh, it's a leak, especially because the quick disconnect kind of has a vapor trail and things like that, and there are vents going off, and people were saying it's a leak. And I gotta say, like 1.5 days after the launch, I was just like, why do people assume it's a leak? It's like, why couldn't it have been something that was planned, but then it just went wrong, right? Because there were a lot of things that didn't sound right to me. And I actually have on the Discord server. I went back after watching the Elon Musk talk, and I was like, see, I kind of mentioned already this, and it was not just because of nothing. I'm not sure if maybe Kevin can show this, but for flight one, they had this document that was called the return reevaluation, that was sort of looking at the things for basically on the programmatic environmental assessment that might change for that flight, and so they were reevaluating that, and they were looking at that. And so one of the things that they said for this particular document was, after ascent engine cutoff, Starship will vent residual main tank propellant during the in-space coast phase of the launch at or above 120 kilometers above ground level. So they already had plans before any of this happened to dump propellant. Now it says there on that particular document, after ascent engine cutoff during the in-space coast, but I wonder myself, like, couldn't it be that, they just wanted to do it while the engines were burning? Because why not, right? That was one of the things, and I actually brought this point again about a day and a half after the flight happened, the flight 2 happened, and all of these things happened, and I was like, maybe this is what happened. They had that leak. No, not leak. Excuse me. They didn't have a leak. They actually dumped the propellant, and so that may have caused an issue. And actually, Elon confirmed that it was actually the liquid oxygen being dumped that caused a fire. We don't really know where. It might have been in the engine section or something, and that eventually triggered the FTS. And you can see actually on the footage from the flight that around 6-7 minutes into flight, you can see some kind of expansion, like gases expanding or something, and it is about a minute after when you see the FTS being triggered. So it's probable that the first thing that we see is the dump happening, and then after a minute or so, they had this issue with a fire, and the FTS being triggered. So that's flight 2. Flight 3, it's a whole different thing. For flight 3, they basically, so Elon said a few things about flight 3. First of all, they are gonna attempt a in-flight, an in-space burn. So after the Starship completes its burn, they're gonna be turning back and then firing back. This was one of the 3 theories that I actually brought up on a recent Starbase update. I think it's the latest one that we released last Tuesday, and it's that Ship 28 completed on the suborbital pad. It completed at one single engine burn using propellant from the header tanks to be able to simulate an in-space burn. So that's what SpaceX talked about. And one of the theories that I talked about was that this could be what they actually do, where they go into that suborbital trajectory, and instead of going to the Pacific Ocean, they actually land in the Indian Ocean. And so we actually have a document, and maybe Kevin can also show this one as well, that actually talked about this. So you can see there on the Starship, on the flight profile, don't pay much attention of the whole thing saying performing a power targeted landing, because that part has been there pretty much since the first document that we saw about this. But the thing that changes there is it says Indian Ocean rather than Pacific Ocean. That was a thing that changed. This is a documentation that is sort of an exhibit next to a permit to fly Starlink satellite antennas on, not the Starlink satellites, but the antennas that actually talk with the satellites on Starship. And so this is not for any specific flight, by the way. This is like a general permit that they have. But this in particular had this document saying Indian Ocean instead of Pacific Ocean. Every other permit that I've seen about this had said Pacific Ocean, but this one in particular said Indian Ocean. And so what was my theory, at least after seeing that sort of simulated in-space burn with Ship 28, was that they were going to do the suborbital trajectory, where if they don't do anything, it just goes all the way to the Pacific Ocean. But if they do that in-space burn and sort of simulate at the orbit burn, then they can land in the Indian Ocean. And so that's my leading theory. Elon already said that they're going to be performing that in-space burn with Ship 28. I do not think it's going to be fully orbital. People assume very quickly that meant they're going to be going into orbit, like proper orbit. Yes, Elon said, oh yeah, we're going to go into orbit. We got to get the ship into orbit. And it's like, Sure, but his orbit is just the sort of suborbital thing, because he also said Flight 2 almost went into orbit, right? And so it's the whole thing about this sort of how you talk about it. I'm still very much in the camp that it's going to be a suborbital trajectory, and they're just going to be targeting the Indian Ocean rather than the Pacific Ocean, at least based on all of these documents. The other thing, as we're showing here, is that they're going to be building a second launch tower. We had also seen parts for this launch tower there. It's on a catch-only tower. There was this big debate that I was totally against about it being a catch-only tower being built there just for catching boosters, things like that. It is going to be a proper launch tower. Elon even mentioned that while they're launching from the other tower, they can upgrade the one that they have already built, so that, I don't know, it maybe gets refurbished better or something like that. It works better, whatever. But yeah, he confirmed all of that they're going to be building a second launch tower at Starbase. And I think I have the V2 and V3 thing. So yeah, they want to be building not just a V2 Starship, but also a V3. The V3 Starship is going to be stretched, while the V2 is just going to improve reliability and things like that. I'm assuming it's also going to be faster to produce, because that's one of the things that SpaceX tends to do when they move into a new version. They just do
Can we
that.
quickly point out how much stretched? Because I think, like, when I first heard him say the numbers, it's like 130 to 450 meters. That's like
a 50% in, or not. That's like
not
like 25% increase.
Yeah,
I keep thinking it's 100 meters tall.
There's so many things to talk about this, but yeah, someone actually mentioned the tipping point test, where that's also going to be a thing for the third flight. We had seen some word about it from NASA. Jessica Jensen also talked about it, but they didn't fully confirm it. Now Elon actually fully confirmed it, where they're going to do this transfer of propellant from the header tanks to the main tanks. So they're going to have that as well for the third flight. Now again, V2 of a Starship, V3, V2, we're already seeing probably some of those parts, Pathfinder parts, new things. I think we have seen a new header tank design, I believe, out at the production site. So we have all of these things coming online. V3 is probably going to be coming online a little bit later, is my thinking. And then also we also had Elon say that Flight 3 will test the pest dispenser, the door and everything, which has already changed as well. We have another animation on that talk showing a different design of the door. It's some kind of 3-part system or something. It's weird. But yeah, so we have all of these things going on, all of these stuff that Elon talked about. They're going to do also ship-to-ship propellant transfer at the end, or at least he hopes to do that for Starship to be able to do that by the end of the year, but definitely by 2025. And then, lunar landing without crew for Artemis, for HLS Artemis, for basically in 2025, late 2025, and then late 2026, as we mentioned before, the crewed landing. So, and no, Kevin, Ship 26 is not the best ship.
No, absolutely not.
Nope.
And I guess we can already clear out the whole thing about Ship 26 is a tanker or a whatever. Like, all of the stuff that we're seeing is just not at all like that.
It's just like I never got the concept of it being a tanker, because a tanker is like the one thing they for sure want to make reusable, because that's like the whole purpose of the tanker. So when everybody was like, "Oh, it's expendable, it's a tanker demo," I was always like, "But why? They would make that reusable."
People were saying a depot demo, which is like, I mean, I guess, but also like there is no way to transfer propellant between starships right now. No matter what they could do, they do not have that equipment set up yet. They don't even have RCS thrusters
and
to
I don't
dock
even
yet.
And I don't even think that's going to be a thing for version 1 of a Starship. Like, no way. And the way that Elon talked about this being the transfer ship to ship being a thing late 2024, 2025 definitely, is that it sounds like it's going to be something maybe V2 or even V3 Starship, what it's going to be able to do that. I just remember he also talked about Starlink being launched late 2024, 2025. Again, that's Elon time. So there's the whole debate as well of Ship 28 is going to launch its Starlinks into orbit. It's actually going to be into orbit and it's going to re-enter and whatever. And it's like that already tells you that if they actually load any Starlink, it may be more like a oversized paperweight because it will not be a functional satellite. And then again, it's also not doing a proper orbit. I'm gonna be very bullish on this. I don't think it's gonna be a proper orbit, and there's many other reasons apart from all of the stuff that we have seen for me to believe that. But anyway, I think we've covered everything.
Yeah, I
What
think
else?
you.
We have a list.
That was
a
that
long
was
list of
that was
everything.
impressive.
I
That was
had to do that
detailed
off the
list.
top of my head, so I wouldn't be looking at the document. But yeah, I basically
We can
did all
we can
the top of my
we
head.
can just clip this. Alex explains the recent Elon Musk presentation in just about 8 minutes.
The entire history and future of Starship in 8 minutes.
Yes,
Love that.
that was impressive. Yeah, I think. I mean, overall, it doesn't really tell us that much more interesting about V2 because besides more like reliable and better. It's like okay, but what? Like I feel like okay, my camera just turned bright. That was interesting. But I feel like my overall the details are still very much limited. So we'll see how that goes and what we'll get in terms of more information. I mean, we saw that weird header tank the other day, which might be related to V2 hardware, but we'll see.
Yeah.
But it's, I think in the end, and I don't want to disappoint people here, I think V2 might be something, and I'm really right here. V2 might be something where so Alex was transferred to Mars. I'm apparently on the surface of the sun. Where
I'm now
where,
on Starbase again.
I think V2 will be some of these things where there will be nerds that will be very excited about this, including us. Because we are like, yay, they changed the diameter of a header tank by a few centimeters. That's so cool and exciting. But I feel like overall the picture might not change that much.
Work continues on the OLM.
Yep. I will
As
investigate
always,
my
work
camera.
does continue. Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, V2, in my mind, this is speculation. It feels like it's going to be more like cleaning things up, possibly Raptor 3, getting it ready for like several orbits, whereas V3 will be like, you know, payload deployment, more refined Starlink, stretched, of course. There's a lot of upgrades that could potentially be coming. It's going to be exciting to see those get developed. I mean, we've seen Ship 26 is going through so many paces. They did engine testing on it for some reason. Now they're putting stringers on it. Like, what is happening with this ship? It seems like it's the test mule right now of Starship. But yeah, and of course we got the OLM down here being refurbished, or down here. There we go, being refurbished ahead of Flight 3 and ahead of the next flight campaign. We've already seen the static fire of Booster 10, so it's coming in the next month or two for sure. Hopefully,
I fixed the light issue. My apparently
there.
Logitech was ignoring the fact that I explicitly told it to not change brightness. So it's like, no, you told us no, but we don't care.
This camera is inclined. We probably need Sean to go out there and fix it.
All right, moving on to some questions. Alex, there's one thing that was kind of missed. I saw people talking about here too, not necessarily from you, but from that has been not really talked about much. Is there any news on what caused the booster to explode on the second flight test? Has there been any information on that?
We don't know. That's one of the things that Elon did not talk about. He did not talk about a lot of things, to be fair. I was itching for more information. But yeah, he just didn't really talk about the booster at all. He was more interested on getting... I mean, to be fair, probably SpaceX as a whole is more interested on getting the Starship out into orbit, or like the orbit, as one will call it. But yeah, it's obviously more important because that's the thing that enables them to do missions, and like the booster recovery is very secondary right now. If the booster can go through all the way to stage separation and then it explodes, whatever, Starship is going on to its planned trajectory and everything. we'll fix the booster later, right? That's sort of the thinking I'm imagining.
I mean, yeah, it worked on ascent. It doesn't really matter if it works on descent just yet. That's a secondary goal. So yeah, we'll have to see what happens there and see what they change, if anything, for Flight 3. And speaking of Flight 3, I'm going to toss this to you, Adrian. Jack Fisher in chat here is asking a very important question. When are we planning to get Flight 3 merch into the store? I know you're Mr. Store Manager.
So Pauline, Mark, and I have been working on that, and we are closing in on the Flight 3 merge, including the patch. There's just a few final touches to do, but we have a plan, and the patch is, I can confirm there will be a patch, and it's mostly complete. So at time, most likely we'll talk about full stack-ish again. Like once we have like this flight full stack, that's probably when we'll start to release it. But I can already tell you it's looking fantastic. Pauline once again did a really cool job with the patch.
Oh, who's fighting?
Why are we? No, am I fighting about the merch or something?
Alex
oh,
doesn't
Adrian,
like the merch.
you should do more merch. Come on, do more merch so I can wear it. Right? It's like I have to fight him or something.
Apparently we are discussing about when Flight 3 now. So I'm gonna say mid-February. There you go, Alex.
Yeah, mid-February. We're not gonna have any debate about this. I already said like literally an hour after the launch happened, I said it's gonna be February, the month of love, because that's when you go to places and everything. Go to Hawaii, then there you go.
Is it a bad time for me to pop in and say early March?
Oh, come on. It's going to be on the 13th day of the 13th month of the 13th year, whatever. But yeah.
What?
Yeah, Laos is March, but anyways, it's a Simpsons reference. Come on.
Okay.
Keep on going.
I'm going to pretend you didn't say that. Musical Wolves here right on time with a $2 super chat. Is it likely early March for Flight 3? Alex? No?
I mean, likely it can even be around the time of the heat death of the universe. I guess everything is likely. Now, I just think it's there's a good chance it may happen in February, and I'm rooting for February, but we'll see. People are already saying, "Oh, the 30th of February." Well, it could be the 20th. Not the 20th, the 29th.
It could also be the 20th.
It could.
I mean, it could be the 20th.
Yeah. It could be. I guess. Yeah, sure. I don't know what I even expected when I asked that question.
The 29th.
I think like mid-February is like around a good expectation right now.
Sounds good. Grounded local carrier plate. I'm going to toss this to you, Adrian. They're asking, could the one engine test we've heard about be the transfer from the header tank to the main tank?
I have a deja vu as I was asked this question. I mean, based on Elon's talk, that's what they kind of want to prove here. They want to prove, like that they can deorbit. We cannot see inside the tanks. That's a problem. We wish we can. We could see them, but we can't. But it could be. It's very. I would call it plausible, without going that much into more speculation.
I am talking while muted. There we go. I knew I would be. Had a cough there. So moving on to our next super chat from Jim Cavett here with a $5 super chat, simply saying, thanks for another great presentation, NASA Spaceflight. Thank you, Jim, for all your support that you've been giving. Abdullah here has become a PadRap member. Welcome to the club, and we hope you enjoy all your membership perks that you're going to be getting. Corvus here in chat is asking to bring back the plushie. Adrian, I feel like we're going to get like PTSD from that.
Stay tuned. Move on.
Okay, moving on.
We're gonna need a V3 Starship plushie or something.
Oh my god,
or a tower plushie.
We're gonna need a hot stage ring adapter. Aravel here with asking to Adrian as well. Could we get a magnet version of the patch? I'd love to have one on their fridge.
Not planned.
I mean, you can glue
Understood.
one on the back.
Why are we?
and
Why
then
are you
put it on the
not
fridge.
doing the merch pull? I will
I'm just
put it
asking
on my
some
list
neat
and see if
questions
we
that are
find
coming
something.
through here.
Hey, people are asking. Come on. There, you can see. You can. Hi, I don't have the patches right here, but yeah, you can just glue a magnet on the back and just put it on the fridge.
I guess you could.
I've-
Yeah, and again,
Yeah, you can do it.
shop.nasaspaceflight.com. We still have our Flight 2, some Flight 1 things up there too.
I don't have.
I
now
cannot
any of
show
them
mine.
here.
Mine are stitched on my backpack.
Mine are over there. They're just off screen.
Nice.
Anyway, one more question. And I just
Or
immediately
glue it
lost
to
the
the
question.
fridge. Yeah.
There we go. Al Man here, or AI Man here, asking, do you think they'll be able to remove all the old tank farm before Flight 3 happens? Alex, what do you think? Are they going to get rid of it all?
I think so. We're seeing them just removing the ones that they are not using or that they do not completely need or that their replacement can be done fairly quickly. The big ones, they're bringing new tanks, as we just saw at the beginning of the NSF Live. There was one of these new tanks coming in. But it'll still take time to be able to plug all of that in. Maybe by Flight 4, Flight 5? I don't know. They also, I don't know if they may even do a second tank farm for the second tower. We'll see.
That's a good question of like, are they going to share the tank farm? In which case, it would take longer between launches because you need to refuel the tank farm. Maybe they'll start it off connected, then build a new one later. We'll have to see on that front. I mean, we haven't even seen construction begin on the second launch pad. Let's see, and one final super chat from I'd rather be flying an X-Wing with a $5 super chat saying, even if hardware is ready by mid-February, will we sit and wait another 3 months for paperwork? Adrian, what do you think?
Jessica Jensen expects paperwork readiness by February. They will be hardware ready by January and expect paperwork readiness by February. Are we being
Gotcha, well,
outshot?
that's-
Yeah, this is
I'm
like
hearing-
the Oscars right now.
Yeah, right. They're starting to play the
Or the
music.
Game
I know.
Awards, I guess.
That was
Yeah.
the last super chat, Kevin. I'm getting done. So yeah, that's like I said, that's going to bring us to the end of our show today. We talked about a lot of different subjects: Vulcan, New Glenn, Artemis, Starship, and yeah, it's been a fun show. I'd like to, as always, thank our members, especially our launch directors and flight engineers, who are incredibly generous in supporting the work that we do here. And if you'd like to support us by becoming a launch director or flight engineer, your name will pop up here on the list, which is ever growing, which is a great thing to see. Again, thank you to all of our supporters for helping us do the work that we do. Thank you to super chatters and people who purchase things to the store at shop.nasaspaceflight.com. All right, so I think it's going to bring us. I think it's going to bring us to the end of our show today. I'd like to thank, first off, Alex. There you are. No, yeah, there you go, Alex.
Where
Thank you.
am I? Yeah.
I don't know my lefts and rights on camera anymore. Thank you, Alex, for hopping in on the show today and giving us your Starship and Falcon 9 expertise.
Pleasure. I think I'm going to be later tonight with a Starlink launch that we have from here from the cave. You can see there the VAB.
Yeah.
The pad, I guess, should be in that direction from where I am sitting right now, I guess. But yeah, we're going to have that Starlink launch, hopefully launching this time around, and see you later.
Awesome. And thank you to Kevin in the studio for pushing the buttons, pulling the levers, and making this stream possible. And I've been your host for today, Ian Atkinson, reporter with NASA Spaceflight. Thank you all for watching. But before you head out, we have a message from Adrian here, who, first off, I'd like to thank you for hopping on. What's going on, Adrian? Where are we going after this?
Yeah, today we are not directing to any of our streams. We want to bring everybody to the Astro Awards performed by Everyday Astronaut Tim Dodd, good friend of the channel, doing the first in-person Astro Awards in Austin, Texas, I think. And we all think it's going to be an amazing show. That's why we moved NSF Live a bit earlier today, because frankly, you probably want to watch it. We all want to watch it. So this one will direct you right to that stream. And we wish Tim and, of course, the whole EDA team good luck with that event. And I wish everybody a good, great Astro Awards.
Absolutely. So once again, thank you all for watching. We're going to send you over to the Astro Awards. We'll be in chat. I know I'll be in chat there, and we hope to see you guys there. Show Tim some love. We'd love to support everyone in the spaceflight community. Thanks for tuning in today on this slightly early show, and we will see you tonight for a Starlink launch. We hope you all have a great week, and we will see you next Sunday for the next NASA Spaceflight Live. Have a good one, y'all.
And here we go.
We have liftoff.
Propulsion continues to be normal.
R68 chamber pressure looks good.
Doubling up. Roger, the planet.
Water towers fly! Yes! Echo Delta nominal.
Flight downside speed off. Bring in SPD off. Off. It's orange!
Oh my god! Oh my god!
Decollage. Put that in the big bag, Jingle.
343 unfolds to go.
Indeed.
We rise together back to the moon and beyond.
This methane will be igniting in the flare, correct?